The southwest corner of the Pacific Ocean, 35 million years ago. Beneath the sea, massive geological forces were beginning to stir. They pushed rocks up out of the ocean and into the clouds, creating a huge tropical island. It rose so high that glaciers grew on its peaks, and it became the tallest island in the world. It was first seen by Europeans in 1526, but was so rugged and inhospitable that most of it remained unexplored for centuries. It is still one of the least known, yet most extraordinary places on Earth. From the top of its tallest mountains to the bottom of the surrounding seas, New Guinea has an almost unbelievable variety of landscapes and wildlife. Being confined to an island, many of the animals here have evolved into unique and unusual forms of life. Strange birds, and even stranger mammals. New Guinea was created by a great continental collision between Australia, Asia, and the Pacific. That crash continues today, and the northern shoreline sits right on top of the collision zone. This film is a journey from the seas out of which the island grew into the heart of its extraordinary interior. The island lies at a major marine crossroads between the Pacific and Indian Oceans. It's a perfect position for underwater wildlife, which sweeps in from all directions. These coral reefs are among the richest in the world, but even today, many are barely explored. Predators like these lionfish patrol the reefs, so smaller animals need places to hide. Clownfish use the stinging tentacles of anemones for protection. There are 10 species of anemone in the world known to harbour clownfish in this way, and all of them are found here. The fish have a special chemical on their skin which prevents the anemone from attacking them. It's a perfect place to hide. The ocean side of the reef, where currents flow in from the open sea, is particularly rich in fish life. And their predators too. Just beyond the coral, the water drops off to depths of several hundred meters, and huge oceanic hunters sweep in out of the blue. Hammerhead sharks are especially common. One day, over 40,000 years ago, another ocean wanderer came this way. When people arrived here, they were probably the world's first human navigators. Traveling from Asia, they'd had to cross large stretches of open sea. Whether they used canoes, as families do today, or just simple rafts, we'll never know, because stone axes are the only surviving evidence from that distant past. The lagoons are full of seafood, and the shores support edible plants in their fertile volcanic soils. It must have seemed an idyllic place to settle. The population grew, moved inland, and eventually created the greatest diversity of human cultures on Earth. New Guinea has almost 1,000 languages, and an even greater number of tribes. Although humans managed to travel across the sea, most animals did not. Apart from rats and mice that probably floated on rafts of vegetation, the only other mammals to arrive from Asia were those that could fly. Bats, especially the large fruit bats, made the journey with ease. Once here, they evolved into a great variety of different forms. With about 50 species, New Guinea is the fruit bat capital of the world. These are some of the biggest, spectacled flying foxes. They live near the coast and spend their days in huge communal camps, often tens of thousands strong. If they want a perfect position, they have to fight for it. In the intense heat of the tropical sun, gentle wing flapping helps cool their bodies. When they're comfortable, they fold their wings into sunshades. Each evening, the colony takes to the air in search of fruit. They're off on a journey that may take them 50 kilometers between dusk and dawn. Much of the island's coastline is fringed with steamy swamps. The southern shore is less than 100 kilometres from Australia, and every year many Australian birds fly in as temporary visitors. In these coastal swamps, water levels rise and fall seasonally. As pools shrink during the dry season, birds become concentrated in their thousands. These magpie geese are searching for tender aquatic plants, but the herons and egrets are hunting for meat. When water levels fall, fish, frogs and eels become trapped, creating a feast for the birds. Several of the birds feeding here are found nowhere else in New Guinea. The elegant Brolga crane is one of them. In a quiet backwater, hundreds of catfish are trapped, making an easy meal for Australian pelicans. Working in teams, they're able to pick up fish with almost every scoop. Water monitors are also common here. This one is using its tongue to pull odours out of the air. It can smell a meal. The island has no big carnivorous mammals, so its largest predators are reptiles, and some of them are monsters. This is Salvador's monitor, at over 4 meters, the world's longest lizard, and found only in New Guinea. With no large mammalian meat-eaters to provide competition, the island supports 6 species of big monitor lizards. It seems that here, the age of the dinosaurs lives on. They're powerful hunters, although they often prefer to scavenge on carrion like this wallaby carcass. Several thousand years ago, when sea levels were lower, New Guinea was joined to Australia, so they share many species. The agile wallaby is one of them. The southern coast also has a similar climate to northern Australia, and that includes a distinct dry season. After several months without rain, most of the ground is baked hard, and the wallabies are searching for shoots that remain green. Around midday, they shelter from the sun. Even the wind is hot and desiccating. Licking their forearms helps them lose heat by evaporating saliva from the surface of their skin. These open plains are unusual for New Guinea. They're seasonally flooded, but dry out completely once a year, and are the only area to support large herds of grazing animals. Most of the island is much wetter. During the rains, there are torrential downpours, creating large rivers that flow from the interior. As they meander down to the sea, they have carved out vast floodplains. The river Sepik, which flows north into the Pacific Ocean, is one of the largest. It's over 1,000 kilometers long and drains an area the size of Scotland. The river is relatively young geologically, less than 6,000 years old, and that creates problems for the people who live here. In that short time, very few freshwater fish have had time to evolve, so there are hardly any to catch. The traditional method is to stalk along the edge of the floating grass with a harpoon. A catfish, as usual. Even with modern nylon nets, the haul is still the same. It's a species that has only recently evolved from ancestors that live in brackish estuaries. On fishing expeditions, Sepik people often have to stay away from their villages for several days, and so almost every aspect of their lives has to be adapted to take place in a small canoe. It's an existence that's far from safe. Saltwater crocodiles, the world's largest, have penetrated far upriver. Many Sepik tribes revere the crocodile and carve its image on their canoes. It is believed to be a powerful god, the creator of land out of the mists that hang between water and air. The harsh swamps around their villages are believed to be populated with the spirits of animals, ancestors, and evil ghosts. and that's reflected in architecture and carvings. Beyond the swamps, the land changes dramatically. It rises steeply. The river's now far too fast and steep for canoes. Strange calls echo from the forest. The voices of animals that are found nowhere else on Earth. The island has vast rainforests, but there are no monkeys or apes in the trees. Instead, there are these, tree kangaroos. Monkeys and apes never colonized the island because there has always been a barrier of water between Asia and New Guinea. Tree kangaroos eat leaves and fruit in high branches, but kangaroo bodies were designed originally for hopping across grassland, so they're not the most acrobatic of climbers. Seven species have now evolved to live in the treetops. This is a Dorrier's tree kangaroo with a joey in her pouch. The surrounding sea has kept out not only primates, but many other mammals too. So the biggest creatures to tread the forest floor are not rhino or deer, but birds. A crowned pigeon, about turkey size, the largest pigeon in the world. But this is the biggest of all. A flightless bird standing as tall as a person and weighing over 50 kilos, the cassowary. Cassowaries feed on fallen fruit. They range over great distances in search of it, and have little to fear because there are no leopards or tigers here. The strange wildlife of New Guinea lives in one of the last great rainforests on Earth. The island's trees cover 700,000 square kilometers, making this the largest tropical rainforest outside Amazonia and the Congo. In the warm, wet equatorial climate, vegetation runs riot, providing food for millions of insects. Because they've been isolated on an island, many have evolved into giants. This stick insect is almost a foot in length. The Hercules moth is the biggest moth on Earth, with a wingspan as wide as a dinner plate. Bird-wing butterflies are a similar size, and they're also record breakers as the world's largest butterflies. With no monkeys or squirrels to share the feast, birds that feed on flowers and fruit do very well. Parrots are especially abundant, and so are fruit doves. But the island has also evolved its own unique group of fruit eaters, the famed birds of paradise. There are 38 species living here, and most, like this Stephanis astrapia, are found nowhere else. These are all males. They're generally the most colourful sex because they need attractive plumage to entice a mate. In several species, such as the lesser birds of paradise, males gather to perform at a communal display ground. The dull brown females fly in and out, eyeing up the opportunities on offer. An extravagant display is vital for a male's sexual success, because in a single season, just one individual, presumably the best performer, may take 90% of all the matings. There he goes again. They display only at dawn and dusk, and in the low light, their feathers almost seem to glow. As the light finally fades, some of New Guinea's most unusual and secretive animals awaken. A spotted cuscus, a marsupial possum with a surprisingly colourful coat for an animal that usually emerges after dark. The island has a variety of marsupials, up in the trees and also on the forest floor. This ground cuscus spent the day hiding in a tree hollow, but has now emerged in search of a snack. There are ordinary rats and mice here, but also marsupials that look like them. This is a spiny echimipara, a type of bandicoot. It feeds on almost anything, from earthworms to fallen fruit. Some forest animals are more particular about what they eat. This tiny marsupial specializes on a sweet and almost liquid diet of sap and nectar. Appropriately, it's called a sugar glider, and this one is on its way to join other members of its family, feeding in the blossom of a eucalyptus tree. While feasting on the flowers, sugar gliders pick up pollen on their fur, and when they move to another blossom, they inadvertently transfer it, thereby pollinating the plants. The night has been cool and damp, but now the warmth of the early morning sun begins to draw moisture from the forest and into the air. So high is the humidity that clouds form right in among the trees. There are deep sinkholes, hidden worlds, places of safety for animals able to reach them. These are bare-backed fruit bats, coming back to roost in their hundreds of thousands. They're amongst the most agile in flight of all the fruit bats. Many of the rocky hills rising out of the forest remain, even today, completely unexplored. And earlier this century, the same was true for almost all of the island's mountainous interior. With steep slopes preventing progress from every direction, European explorers assumed that the center of the island peaked in range upon range of rugged, inaccessible summits. It was an interior that seemed almost impossible to penetrate, and not worth the dangers of trying. But two Australian prospectors searching for gold did climb inland in 1930. After crossing ridge after ridge, they found not gold, but completely unexpected scenery. Broad, grassy valleys, and in them, evidence of settlement. Neatly tended gardens, laid out with a complex mixture of crops. People lived here in their thousands. Remarkably, these hidden valleys supported a denser human population than anywhere else on the island. This is the Tari Basin, one of the most remote valleys. It is home to the Huli tribe. Like all highland peoples, they construct houses that are deliberately low on the ground. This enables a small fire to keep the building and its occupants warm during chilly mountain nights. Huli men live separately from their wives in a communal men's house. Until well into this century, the huli had never seen a wheel or any form of metal. And within the living memory of some of these men, stone axes were the best available tools. Today they're still made, although only to sell to visitors. Their wives have their own separate homes. They share these with the family pigs. Evening meal is sweet potato roasted in the embers of a fire. It'll be shared among all the members of the household, humans and animals alike. A good crop of sweet potatoes is a valuable agricultural surplus, and that surplus is stored in the bodies of pigs. They're a family's capital investment, and as with all investments, there comes a time to cash them in. This village has been at war with its neighbours, and men have been killed. Pig meat in huge quantities is used as compensation to pay off the debt of lives that have been lost. Apart from pigs, men also treasure other valuable possessions. Their wigs, made of human hair and bird feathers. The most precious parts are the plumes of birds of paradise. To hunt them, men have to travel out of their valleys into the mountain forest above, because here live some of the most unusual species of all. This is a bluebird of paradise. Early morning, when the males are calling to attract a mate, is the easiest time to find them. The male King of Saxony uses extraordinary feathers sprouting from behind his ears to make his performance more noticeable. In the gloomy mist, sound is equally as important as vision. A brown sicklebill bird of paradise. This tail belongs to one of the rarest of all. Restricted to just a few mountain ranges, the ribbon-tailed astrapia has a longer tail for its body size than any bird in the world. The McGregor's bird of paradise survives higher than any other, in remote mountains at up to 4,000 meters, where it shares the stunted forests with high-altitude parrots. Just as the birds up here are different from those lower down, so are the forests themselves. The climate is much cooler than in the lowlands, with temperatures sometimes falling to freezing at night. Marsupials are mostly active after dark, and those that live here are well adapted to the cold. This silky cuscus has much thicker fur than its lowland relatives. But to get a good grip, the tip of its prehensile tail remains bare. A long-beaked echidna is hunting for worms. It's spiny like a hedgehog, but the spines are covered in dense, insulating fur. Although related to the duck-billed platypus of Australia, it's found only in the mountain forests of New Guinea. The carpet of moss hides beetles and other invertebrates which striped possums search out with a powerful sense of smell. They produce a strong and noxious odour designed to deter attackers, and so, like skunks which have a similar defence, these possums are boldly patterned to warn potential predators away. This one has located a meal hidden in a rotting log. It's a large beetle grub. The island's centre is like a spine, built from chain upon chain of towering mountain ranges, extending for 2,000 kilometres without a break. At a height of around 3,000 metres, the forest opens up to reveal rolling meadows of subalpine grassland dotted with tree ferns. It's a unique landscape that may have been created by fire or possibly by frost. Above the tree line, the last vestiges of tropical life are left behind. This landscape is more reminiscent of Scotland, Norway, or New Zealand than of an island almost on the equator. There's just bog, tussock grass, and tundra, and on the highest mountain of all, just snow and ice. This is Mount Jaya, at 4,884 meters, the highest peak between the Andes and the Himalayas. It makes New Guinea the tallest island in the world and the only tropical one with glaciers. Huge deposits of gold and copper have now brought the 20th century to even the remotest mountains. The highlands and their people have become a melting pot, as modern ways and new technology sit side by side with lifestyles and values that stretch back through time for thousands of years. In this apparent turmoil, traditions have survived, at least in part by being adaptable, by making the most of new opportunities. Until well into the present century, most of the highlands were in effect still in the Stone Age, so the pace of transformation has been truly tremendous. In spite of this, the highlands remain remarkably isolated, reached easily only by air, by flying over the vast forests and rugged mountains that lie between here and the coast. On New Guinea as a whole, change has been relatively recent, and so 70% of the island is still covered in dense tropical forest. It remains, at least for the moment, one of the last great wildernesses of the world.